Hey everyone, welcome back to Crypto Cash. Thank you very much for joining me here today. We're taking another look at CTSI. Got a lot of requests for this one. It's very popular. It's actually gaining a lot of momentum in regard to its follower base. A lot of people asked me to cover this again, kind of keep a close eye on it. So we'll just go ahead and do that over the next few days to make sure that we understand good entry points and essentially what's going on, because Bitcoin did have a sell-off again today. Big surprise, and we'll take a look at that as well. Furthermore, just know that I am not a financial advisor. This is for educational purposes only. Please always do your own research. I also have a link to my Patreon account and Telegram community in case you want to go ahead and get engaged with that. Last but not least, there's $25 in Bitcoin from Voyager. Feel free to reference that as well. And without further ado, let's go ahead and get right to it. All right, folks, let's go ahead and take a look at CTSI. And what we do is we always look at Bitcoin and Ethereum first to see what happened in the market and how they correlate, but furthermore, obviously, get the overall sentiment of what's going on right now. And if you aren't already familiar, right now at this point, Bitcoin did have a major sell-off, and we're taking a look at Bitcoin here right now. This is a 4-hour chart. And just to jump right in, if you can see here, we were at yesterday evening, approximately 24 hours ago. Price is at about 59,000, testing a resistance line here. So I'm actually going to add that because I think that that is a new resistance. So likely it will break above and stay above. When it does, because it's been tested 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times in the 4-hour chart. It's quite a lot. So unfortunately it didn't break, it sold off. It should likely recover and come back up, but good news here at this point, the price is currently holding on the 4-hour chart at right around 56,500, and that is exactly where the 100-day moving average is sitting. Okay, so this is a good sign. So just big picture, that's what that looks like, but unfortunately we lost our support of 57,000, and it does look like at this time the price is traveling between the 200 and 100-day moving average. Looking at Ethereum, pretty much just a mirror image of what just occurred with Bitcoin. So I had the major sell-off, came down to a low of 3646, 3,646, and came back up to about 4,058, back down. So it's working itself into a channel where the average true range is essentially narrowing, and we're finding it to be a little bit more affordable right now. So the likelihood of Ethereum continuing upwards is pretty high. So if you have any money to invest, wouldn't be a terrible idea to try to get in while the price is still affordable. Okay, crazy I'm saying affordable because 2 months ago it was half this price. It's just insane the way that things work out in crypto sometimes. So that is kind of what's going on with Ethereum. Let's go ahead and move on to CTSI now. And we always start with a 1-day chart and work our way down. So we'll look at the 1-day chart, 4-hour, 15-minute, and then the 1 minute to finish. So first things first, as we can see with the price action on the 1-day chart, we've had a significant ramp up. See here, 1, 2, 3, 4 days ago, the price decided to just shoot right through the previous resistance. And as you can see here, the resistance level is now support. So previous resistance of $1.68 is now a support. And you see the price came down to test this right here. Let's make that a straight line. Okay, so that's a good sign. Basically just means that the likelihood of the price staying above $1 and roughly to say 6-7 cents is pretty high, as long as Bitcoin decides to essentially keep itself above the current support level of 53,000, because that's the support for Bitcoin. Okay, so big picture, that's kind of what we're looking at there. And then moving on to essentially the indicators, let's go ahead and see what we're looking at here. RSI is back under 70, which is good. I like to see that because obviously, as you can see here, and take note of this here, the RSI went up over 70. You can see there's a retracement and it sold back off, ramped back up, and it also bumped up over 70, significantly over 70, but nonetheless it was over 70, and then the price retraced back down. Okay, so just kind of pay attention to that. The RSI really helps us understand if something's considered overbought or oversold, of course, and knowing that and seeing that could help you save some money by maybe trimming some off the top before the price comes down. It's not a guarantee, but In scenarios like this, when there's previous patterns of increase and consolidation, it's likely going to do something similar moving forward. Okay, unless it decides it wants to go on a bull run and just keep going up and up and up every day, we're probably going to see continuing patterns which happened in the recent past. So April, if April's a reflection of what's going to happen in May, then there's a good strong chance that we're going to see the price consolidate and find its average true range right here in the 107 to 120 range. Again, that's likely going to happen just based on what I see here, but we'll see in the near future what happens, of course. And just to quickly note, the MACD is swinging. It's basically hit its peak and it's trending down. This doesn't necessarily mean that it's bearish sentiment. It just means that the sentiment is essentially no longer bullish. Okay, so we shouldn't expect to see another ramp up. If so, of course, we'll be able to identify that on a smaller time frame, but that's essentially what we're looking at for the one-day chart. Moving on to the 4-hour. Let's go ahead and see what CTSI says for the 4-hour chart. Now, to look at this here, just to quickly identify, this does identify that there is a bearish sentiment in place. In other words, the bears are in complete control. And to me, honestly, the 4-hour chart is probably the best indicator to use. The one-day chart helps us understand, support and resistance levels, major support and resistance levels, which you can see here have been tested more than just the one time that I saw before. It's been tested twice as a support. But more importantly, the one-day chart just kind of helps us get perspective. You should never make a decision based on the one-day chart. It's too broad of a perspective, not really the most ideal. The 4-hour chart is, in my opinion, the absolute best, because all the moving averages work the most effective. And then, of course, we've got the 15-minute chart, which is a good thing to use for taking entry. Okay, so if you plan to make an entry and look at it a little bit closer, 15-minute chart is great. So just keep that in mind. But all in all, that's kind of what we're looking at there. And then what we can see here too is the volume is kind of dying off. Okay, so anytime the volume dies off, it kind of reaches like it's partially part of a consolidation period where people just trying to take entry to try to average your prices down, and then some people are selling off. But for the most part, we should see it kind of be a little, I guess you could say, loose over the next few hours. We shouldn't see a lot of momentum, just because of the fact that it's kind of an exhaustion period right now. Happens a lot when the price retraces as large as it did, and it didn't help that Bitcoin had a major sell-off here recently, just a few hours ago, because that really drove the price down even further. So it does help, I guess, if you want to consider the fact that now is a better price than it was before, because $1.13 is much better than $1.30, but nonetheless, just something to be mindful of. And if you look at the RSI, it's right in the center. So anytime you see the RSI kind of just cruising around 50, just below 70 and above 30, essentially just kind of hanging out there, it pretty much tells us there's indecision. The price is trying to average itself out, which is why we were likely to see the average true range kind of narrow down here soon into this $1.15-ish category. But good news is, as you can see here again with the support level that we drew on the one-day chart, you can see that it was previously the all-time high of roughly $1 and we'll just say $1.07 to be safe, 107, and it came back down, retraced, eventually came back up. And take a look at this here, and this is pretty common, something to also note as well. Anytime a resistance level is broken, works the same for support when the price comes down too, you'll see that there's a dramatic drive through that. So in this 4-hour period, the price went from 93 cents upwards of $1.17. So a pretty significant increase in that 4-hour time frame. We're talking a 25% increase. And we see that because the fact that the price drove itself through the resistance level. And that happens a lot with all-time highs used. So start paying attention to that. When you mark the all-time highs as resistance levels, you'll notice that they tend to just break through with a vengeance instead of just slowly crawling above, if that makes sense. That being said, looking at the 4-hour chart, this is a pretty strong support level just based on the fact that it's only been tested 2 times. So if I were to consider taking entry, which I wouldn't on just the 4-hour chart alone, generally speaking, a good consideration would be to wait for the price to come down and test that support level at 107 and to wait for confirmation. I'll explain more about that in a moment, but that is essentially what we're looking at for CTSI on the 4-hour chart. So all in all, current sentiment is essentially not bullish or bearish right now. The price is kind of trying to find it itself because of the fact that Bitcoin sold off, and it's that recovery period. Anytime Bitcoin sells off, you'll see a lot of altcoins have a tendency of kind of going stagnant for a little while because people aren't quite sure what to do. They're waiting for Bitcoin to make its mind up and for it to go up or down, which is another reason why you see Ethereum in a lot of cases increase significantly after Bitcoin sells off too, because the fact that Bitcoin, people leave Bitcoin and go right over to Ethereum, the next largest altcoin. Okay, so just some advice there, but nonetheless, pay attention to support and resistance lines moving forward, specifically at 107. And looking at the 15-minute chart, you can see the price is traveling under VWAP. And if you're new to the channel, VWAP is a volume weighted average price. It essentially tells us, it's this blue line that you see here, it tells us what the average price is based off of the last 24-hour volume. Okay, so that works as a major support and resistance level that's moving with the price instead of a moving average is moving with the days. So it's a smaller time frame, so to speak, so it works a little closer. It's similar to an EMA line. Okay, so that's kind of that. In fact, why don't we go ahead and enable the EMA rather, and you can see it's kind of following a similar trend, just a little tighter. And by the way, I use the 15-day EMA, and that one works essentially the best for me, but I typically only use that on the 1 to 5 minute chart. I just want to bring it up here so you can kind of see what I'm referring to. But again, the VWAP is the most important, so with the price being under VWAP right now, I would recommend we wait for confirmation before we take entry, and essentially just make sure that we do something along those lines. Now, when I mean take entry, right? So if you're new to the channel, just let me clarify this. I'm a conservative trader. Okay, so I'm very risk averse. I don't like to gamble with my money. I like to kind of have more certainty. So when I do that, keep in mind, I have less profits because of the fact that I'm growing at a smaller rate, but I'm losing less too. Okay, now I have a very good success rate with this, but waiting for confirmation the way that I do it doesn't always work for everyone. But what I'm referring to here is what I usually wait for in regard to confirmation is I wait for at least 2 solid 15-minute green bars. In other words, essentially I wait 30 minutes for confirmation to note that the price action is moving in an upward fashion and is trending towards a higher point instead of trying to chase the bottom. So just for example, if you take a look at this chart here so far, there's been very few instances, because again, the bottom is consistently being tested, where you see that confirmation, right? So for clarification's sake, if you see this here, right here, let's go ahead and zoom in just to give you an example. If you see this is 2 15-minute green bars. Sorry, it's a terrible drawing, but this is 2 15-minute green bars, right? Closing one after the other. That's the confirmation I'm referring to. However, that isn't confirmation I would take because of the fact that it didn't close above the volume weighted average price and or a major support level. Okay, so I'll just say the VWAP is trending underneath this, which isn't possible considering the fact that it's selling off as hard as it is, but just say it was, then that would be a consideration for entry because there's likelihood of it continuing upward. Again, with the VWAP not traveling below that, there's no support level, it's under resistance right now, and that is the reason why the price continues to drive down. Okay, so again, just something to kind of be mindful of, think about. So if you hear me say, wait for confirmation, 30 minutes, no less than 30 minutes is the recommendation. One last example, here's another example, here's another 30-minute, basically 30 minutes worth of green bars, right? So 2 15-minute green bars, one after the other, closed. We think, oh yeah, that's great, that's confirmation. Not exactly, because this first green bar didn't close above the volume weighted average price. The second one did, but that wasn't enough time for confirmation, right? Because in that next 15-minute period, it sold off. So let's take a closer look and you'll see what I'm talking about. Sorry. All right. So right here, this is that part that I highlighted right there. So looking at that, if you see this next 15-minute section here, it sold off and came back down. And that's because the price was still trending under VWAP. So it wasn't enough time for confirmation. If you wait longer, you'll likely be rewarded. Okay. Again, some people say that it's terrible because of the fact that you're not going to see any gains by doing that, but it's not true because if you look at some other examples previous, I'm sure we'll be able to find them, right? Now again, when it's chasing its bottom, it's selling off like it did. You never want to try to chase that bottom line because you'll always be burnt because the price will keep going down lower and you'll wish you'd waited, right? So if you wait for confirmation, in most cases you'll be okay. So let's see if we can find an example of what that looks like. Okay. So here, for example, you see this green bar closed above VWAP. The second one did too. Obviously, it went all the way up here, and you'd be like, okay, darn it, you missed out on all those gains. Not true. I would be okay with taking entry at this point and waiting for the price to come up a little further, and then I would likely sell somewhere in this range. As soon as the price starts coming back down and I start potentially losing my gains, I get out and I sell. Furthermore, I also ensure that before I get into my entry point, before I take entry, I'm only taking a smaller position, like 20 to 30% of my total overall portfolio that I'm willing to trade at that time. So for example, say you have like $1,000 and you want to invest that 1,000. Instead of putting $1,000 in right here or right here, for example, which in retrospect seems like a good idea, if you put instead just say 20 to 35% into that position and the price reverses on you, you're not going to lose half as much. Okay, again, it's more of a conservative consideration. I'm more risk averse, and if you don't like that, that's okay. It's you. You can do you. But me personally, that's kind of how I approach a trade. Right. So honestly, in this scenario here, in this climate with CTSI, the way it's moving, I personally would like to almost prefer to avoid it, if that makes sense. At least until it hits a major support or resistance line. Even the VWAP isn't enough for me to want to take entry in this kind of climate, just based on how volatile it is. It's just jumping up randomly, it's spiking up here and there, and it doesn't have a lot of consistency. So I kind of just try to avoid these here, but just pay attention to the fact that waiting for confirmation, I think, is very important, and waiting 30 minutes, in my opinion, works the best for me. Okay. So I'll be excited to hear what you do. Perhaps if you have a better trading style, or just one that works well for you, let me know in the comments below. But here's something to note too, because what we said was 107 was our support line. Unfortunately, it doesn't always carry over here with Binance from the 4-hour to the 15. So we'll just go and mark it again. So that's approximately 107. So this is that major support level that I was referring to. So again, it was previous all-time high, 107. Right there. All right, so taking a closer look here, as we can see, the price came down. So if you're chasing and you tried to get entry in this point, you probably got burned because it kept coming down. Again, Bitcoin was selling off at this time, so it's no surprise. But if you understand, kind of what's going on with Bitcoin, that's another reason why you'd want to pay attention here. So if you're going to do anything in altcoins, just take a quick look at Bitcoin first before you invest to see what the overall market sentiment is there. If the 4-hour chart gives you good indications, then it might be a consideration to take entry here. That's what I do before I invest in anything. I look at Bitcoin first, as well as Ethereum, to kind of get a baseline. That being said, once you've identified that and you see that and the price is coming down like this, wait for it to hit a major support or resistance level. Okay. Now, marking a previous all-time high is a really good starting point. You can use that as a new support, because obviously this was an all-time high and it broke above and stayed above, right? See how it broke through here and then shot up and stayed up? It even came back down to test it and was rejected. So it's a very good sign. That means it's a strong support level currently. So just bear in mind, if you were going to consider taking entry here, at least if I were to, I would wait for the price to continue to come back down and to test that support level again. Now, it may never do that, and I might be out, just say whatever that difference is. But me personally, I would rather wait for that, because that's the strongest confirmation you could ask for. Okay. The secondary option, besides waiting for it to come all the way down, because it may not do that, is to wait for the price to bounce above VWAP and to stay above this solid blue line here. And the VWAP is currently trending at around $1.16. So the price comes above VWAP at 116 and closes with 2 consecutive solid green bars, then that'd be a case in point to take entry. Okay. Again, it's going to look something similar to this. Only difference is you want to make sure that first solid green bar closes above VWAP, because what that does, that tells us the momentum is shifting very bullishly, essentially, and it's no longer bearish, and it continues to trend upward. The last factor you want to understand too is that the RSI needs to be under 70 when doing so. So for me, when I take my entry, I wait for 2 solid green bars. I would take my entry point. I would obviously look at the RSI first to identify, to make sure it's under 70. And the main reason why is because it's not considered overbought already, right? Because we looked at the charts earlier, and when the RSI goes up over 70, there happens to be a sell-off, right? This little guy here, for example, peaks up over 70, big surprise. It retraced back down, almost 60% of the way from where it started. So just keep that in mind. If the RSI is under 70, it's a really healthy indication that you can take a long position and likely have more length to work with, right? So, taking an entry right around here is nice because the RSI is pretty low, so you could likely ride it out for a while until you get to a pretty significant increase. Again, that just depends on how well Bitcoin is doing. Because if we look at Bitcoin right now, let's look at the 15-minute chart on Bitcoin, you'll see that it's still kind of figuring things out right now in this little channel. So as long as Bitcoin continues to do this, then CTSI will also do this, right? But if you get indication that Bitcoin is increasing and it starts progressing upwards, and you apply the same sentiment of what I just discussed with you, then you'll notice it's going to work the same way. In other words, if we wait for 2 solid green bars above VWAP, that would be an indication of a buy signal, as long as the RSI, which is still low, is under 70. Okay. So again, this is more going to be applied to people that are looking at a very short-term swing trade, like a swing trade within under 24 hours, same day you're in and out, or like just say a day trade that is within a couple of hours, something short. You don't necessarily have to apply this to a very long position. Just say, for example, you're going to want to invest in CTSI for months and you know for a fact that that's the case. Then maybe buy the bottom right now because it's really close to support, that's fine. But to me, why not take just a couple of extra little steps and wait for a good entry if you're going to make that kind of investment anyways. Okay. Again, just something to consider. I just like to kind of throw that out there to kind of get you to think and be mindful, because the best traders are those who don't get emotionally involved. That's why you want to disconnect yourself from the social aspect of things, because this whole hype thing that happens, it can be very treacherous and very damaging to your wallet. But if you're careful and you go into it more exact with the actual technical data instead of what you're hearing from on the streets, or you see the price jump up so you just want to get in and catch the wave, that's not how it works. That's gambling, and that's not what you want to do with trading. Okay? That being said, I hope you found that beneficial. Again, I do tend to rant sometimes, but it is to try to help you understand more thoroughly how to be a better trader. I'm making training videos too, so we can ensure that we kind of holistically understand how to be a better trader, because it really starts with this, and then of course the technicals are second. All right, so the horse comes before the buggy, right? Something to that effect. I know there's a term in there somewhere, but I just want you to be careful and safe. So just wait for confirmation and make sure that you don't buy into the hype. Double check the RSI is under 70. That's a good starting point. It's not the only answer to all the problems, but I can tell you that's a good place to understand the overall sentiment and how oversold or overbought something is. And in this climate right now, with a massive retracement that we're seeing right now, the RSI is going to be low, so it does tell us there's a good chance that the price will continue to kind of stay in this channel for a while and likely increase once Bitcoin decides it wants to stabilize. If we can get Bitcoin over 60,000, CTSI will take off. I definitely guarantee it. There's a reason why it took off in the first place. It's just timid and concerned right now because everybody's worried that Bitcoin's going to become a bearish, become bearish, and the whole network is going to crash, right? 95%, oh my gosh, everything's gone. That won't happen yet. It will happen eventually, but for right now, we are still in bullish territory, and I think that CTSI is in good shape, and I do feel like right now it is still very affordable and still a good price. Just be mindful of the support level here, because at 107 will essentially tell us what happens going forward. Oh, in regard to that, really quick, if the price comes below 107 and breaks and holds below, it will likely become the new resistance level. So just be mindful of that. If that were to happen, you might want to consider either, well, I would wait to see what happens first, but if you have a large position, maybe consider taking, averaging out before that happens, or just more so add to your position and ensure that you have enough in there once it goes down a little lower. But again, until confirmation happens and we see that support level tested, don't even worry about that. Either way, that's enough for now. Thank you so much for your time. Hope you have a good rest of your day. We'll see you in the next video, and feel free to join us on Telegram if you haven't already. Appreciate you watching again. Have a great rest of your day. Take care.